Church, how you doing tonight? You doing well? Good to see all your smiling faces this evening. Glad you're here with us. If you weren't with us last week, just to give you a heads up, we're in part 2 of a 2-week series we're going through called Control-Alt-Delete, where we're looking at social media, the internet, some of the dangers there, the risks involved, but also the importance that we are informed of these things. And I can tell you firsthand, doing the high school ministry here, just how important it is that we as parents and as the adults are informed of these things and are well prepared for the action we need to take at home to lead our family and to protect our children. It's an incredible tool that can be used for great good, but in the hands of the enemy, it can be done and used in a way that causes a lot of damage. And so if you didn't get to see part 1 of this video series, I'd encourage you, go on the YouTube channel, the church's YouTube channel, and we have part 1 still up. You can watch that, recap on all of that stuff. He has a lot of great information in there you don't want to miss. But then tonight we're going to go ahead and jump into part 2 of this series and pick up where we left off last week. So if you want to bring your attention to the screen, we'll go ahead and dive into part 2.
Okay, so tonight's part 2, I'm going to do no review. We're jumping into a whole new part of the message. Remember what I told you last week? We looked at the why we need to be vigilant, and this week we're going to look at more of the how to be vigilant. And so if you missed last week, you can go online and get the notes. You can watch the message and the like. So tonight here we're in Proverbs chapter 22, verse 6. The first point of tonight is control, because we're going along with the whole Control-Alt-Delete thing. Control is going to start with us as parents, okay, or as grandparents, or whoever you might be, or even if it's just your own life, okay. Proverbs 22:6, though, specifically in the area of children, says, "Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he's old, he won't depart from it." Now, when it comes to technology, we stated last week that we need to teach our children how to be responsible when it comes to using devices. We looked at how much time. I gave you guys facts and statistics. I thought you guys were going to run out of the building, but apparently a lot of you guys really like that, and I appreciate that you do, because it establishes where we're at. And even just in the last week, I mean, just more articles and more articles are coming out about people either misusing technology or the problems that it's causing in people's lives. If you remember from last time, that technology in and of itself is neither good or evil. It's how you use it, okay? A phone is just a phone. A computer is just a computer. You can log on and do awesome things. You can keep connected with family, or you can sin. You can waste time, or you can redeem time. It's up to you what you're going to do with it. So with training up a child, I want to talk to you right now about a lot of the things that you need to be discussing with your children when it comes to technology, okay? So for example, number 1, we need to teach our children how much time is appropriate to spend on their devices. So think about it for a moment. Some of you might say, I think it's fine to spend 10 or 15 minutes a day. Some might say, I don't think you should ever spend any time on it. And others might say, well, I don't know, 10 hours a day, is that a big deal? So we need to have a conversation with our children about appropriate time usage. I'm going to give you a walkthrough tonight, for example, on a couple of devices, how you can figure out how much time your child is actually spending on their devices, okay? The next thing is to teach them the consequences of misusing technology and the real dangers of it, okay? Now, they need to understand that everybody that they come in contact with on the internet isn't who they say they are. Now, when you and I were little, when I was little, my mom and dad taught me you don't talk to strangers. And then we bring our kids to church, and what do? We talk to all kinds of strangers. It's okay at church, right? To an extent, right? We need to protect our family, but when our kids go online, here's the problem. And we talked about this last week. A lot of parents buy this supercomputer for their kids that goes in their hand and in their pocket, and they don't talk to them about any of the dangers of the internet. And so now this child has this phone. When I say child, we're talking probably most likely a teenager. And they go on and they download apps and they get social media, and now all of a sudden they're interacting with people on the internet and they don't know who they are, okay? 65% of all teenagers admit to having conversations with people. They have no idea who it is in the real world. They only know this person digitally. 19% of those teenagers set up a face-to-face meeting with the stranger. Are you listening to what I'm saying? They set up a conversation with a total stranger, and then they set up a meeting with a total stranger because they believe this person is being truthful about who they are. If you're letting your 10, 11, or 12-year-old on Instagram because you think your kid is more mature than other kids their age, there's a great probability that your child may set up a face-to-face meeting with that stranger because they think the stranger is just like their buddy at school. This is Brian Hausman of Tech Savvy Parenting in an interview August 7th, 2018. So people aren't thinking about what they're giving their child, and then the child is thinking, well, everybody is like everybody in my community or like the kids I'm talking to at school. And what they don't realize is that there's very devious people in the world that are using technology to hunt down children and abuse them. So we have to make sure, listen, in the church, we cannot just blindly hand our kids a phone and not even know what they're doing with it. We've got to talk about safeguards, and we've got to talk to them about the information that they're giving to others, which is the next thing. Teach them not to give their personal information to anyone. Period. When it comes to posting pictures online, I may say some stuff over and over and over again. It's all swirling around in my head. Okay? I've gone over my notes 20 or 30 times. And another 2 times in the back there before I came out, okay? So forgive me if I repeat the same information, but there's things that are important that you talk to your kids about not doing. It should be a good practice that you don't do them either. Things like, if you're going to take a picture at Disneyland, make sure your geotagging is turned off. You do not need to share your location. It's obvious you're at Disneyland, okay? You also should think about the fact as an adult that while you're away from your home, you go ahead and upload that photo. You've let every criminal in the neighborhood know you are not at home. And your house is a target. So when I go on vacation, I do not post pictures. You will not know that I was anywhere till I come home. Then I will post. If I want to post a picture, like we went to Yosemite one year, I told my family, you will post no pictures while we are gone because it lets everybody know we're not home. And guess who, when you're robbed, you're more likely to be robbed by someone that knows you because they know where your stuff is, okay? So if they don't know that you're gone, you don't want to advertise that you're gone. That's why you do stuff like you automate your home, you get lights to turn off and on, right? You have someone come by and pick up because there's obvious signs that your home is empty if you've got a pile of newspapers in the yard. But when we get on technology, we don't think about it. So there's other things, like, for example, you teach your kids, don't take pictures with the street name behind you. You know, you don't want to take a picture at school out front in front of the sign and post it online because you're giving people information about yourself that they shouldn't have. Your child should have their settings set to private if they have social media. You should too, especially if you have kids. You should just be careful, okay? So it's easy for people, and this is what they do. They go and they look at all this information, and it just takes time, and they can put it all together. They even get down to pets. They know what kind of pets you have. If you were here on Sunday morning, you heard Pastor Jack talk about the fact that people are saying, well, you have this kind of dog. Oh, I have this kind of dog. And this is how, when we talk about them meeting up somewhere, this is how they're meeting up. Because this kid now believes that you have a dog like I have a dog, and let's meet up at the park, we'll let our dogs play, and we'll have fun. And then they get there, and the person does not have a dog, and they're a creeper. I won't give an age, because then that would indict some of us just because of our ages. So make sure that they know what they're doing, okay? Teach them how to use their social media to glorify God and not themselves or their bodies. Dads, talk to your daughters about not posting indecent pictures of themselves on the internet. Ladies, be careful. Don't post inappropriate pictures of yourself on the internet. I am sad to say that as a high school pastor, I've had to unfollow a number of our high school girls because they begin to post pictures of themselves indecently in bathing suits, and I'm not going to continue to follow them. And I don't feel, if that was you and you said, why did Pastor Shadrach unfollow me? That's why. Because I'm a married man, and even if I was a single man, I do not need to see any woman like that. Okay? And I'm not saying at the beach, I'm talking about indecent. Indecent, okay? So you've got to be careful because the world that we live in is supercharged, and the Bible talks a lot about how we should be as people. And the unfortunate thing about social media is people don't get to know you. They don't get to know who you are. Okay, we'll talk more about that in a moment. They don't get to know who you are. They just see a picture. And it's really hard to determine someone's character by their picture, although it's much easier to look at someone and think that they have poor character because of the types of pictures they're posting. Does that make sense? So, you could have a bunch of kids having a birthday party, and they take a picture, and they're all standing around with red cups, and someone else is like, well, those kids are all drinking. It's like, well, no, there's just punch. And there was that, and the mom and dad were the ones taking the picture, it's just, but when you post it online, it's really hard to know what's going on. It's not the whole picture. So teach them how to use their social media to glorify God. I got this, and I don't even know where I got it, so I don't have the link to where it came from, but it says, help your kids understand that likes and followers don't determine their worth. Man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. Affirm who they are on the inside. Character, goals, and dreams, not only how they appear on the outside. And there's so much focus on social media on the outside. And I think that part of the problem, I've read a lot about the pressure on our teenagers and the suicidal thoughts or the depression that they're dealing with comes from this false world. Because it looks like everybody's life is awesome, and then they look at their own life and they go, well, my life stinks. Like, what can I do to get my life like that? It's a false world. Teach them the value of a face-to-face conversation. If you do that with your child, they will be so far ahead when it comes to actually getting a job because they can talk to people. They can look someone in the face and have a conversation rather than, I don't know what to do, my phone's not in front of me, By the way, I just didn't put this in my notes, but I just remembered. Today, as I was driving here, I saw a teenage girl walking across the street on her phone like this. Can you talk to your kids about not just walking around in public with their face buried in their phone? Wherever they go, they can't walk around like that. You shouldn't walk around like that, okay? Because women are getting attacked because they're walking around with their face. Look, if there's a guy that wants to hurt you, it doesn't matter, I guess, woman or man. If you're walking around like this, they're not going to even see it coming. So they need to be looking around, especially when they're walking across the street. They're in a crosswalk. She was in a crosswalk, and she was walking, and not once did I see her look up. Last year, this was funny. I saw a kid on a Segway. You know those two little wheel with the platform? Going to school over by Roosevelt High School with his phone. He was just going, bzzz, and I was like, oh, I hope he falls. I was just in a moment like, I don't think I would have gotten my phone out fast enough to record it, but I would have loved to have. But it was like, the cartoon WALL-E, where they're all going around with it? It's like a prophetic movie that Pixar did about where we're at. So we just got to teach our kids, right? Okay, so teach them the difference between real relationships and social media relationships. A recommendation, if you have a teenager and they want a Snapchat or an Instagram, this is between you and God and your family to figure out. My recommendation, okay, for my 15-year-old daughter, we allowed her to have an Instagram. It's on my wife's phone and it's private, meaning she has to accept a friend request. I've talked to her about a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about tonight. She already knows. And so it's on my wife's phone. She sits in the living room or in the kitchen with it. And a lot of times we're laughing, like I'll send her funny, she loves corgis. So I'll send her, pictures of corgis or funny, corgis doing funny stuff or whatever. And that's just throughout the day or whenever, okay? But that's how she uses it. Otherwise, she is not going to have it on her own phone, and she's definitely not going to be in her bedroom on her social media, okay? The next thing under this is set the example. So not only are you talking to your children about these things, you have to set the example. You cannot come home from the office or from the job and go sit down on the couch, ignore your family, and get on your phone. Okay, you don't have permission to do that. You need to engage your family. You know when you're done raising your kids? This is just my opinion. When they're out of the house. When they move out of the house, if there's no one else there and you and your wife want to bury your heads in your phones, that's fine. But as long as they're in the home, you should, I don't know, I don't want my kids to move. I mean, I do want them to move out, but I don't want them to move out. You know, I love them, and I just want to spend time with them. So when they're home, we try to be together. You know, we talk, we laugh, and we have a good time. And you want to have that. So 1 Timothy 4:12 says, be an example to believers in word, in conduct, in love, in spirit, in faith, in purity. Look at purity. Think about it. 3 John 11 says, beloved, do not imitate what is evil, but what is good. So it's not evil to have technology. It's not evil to use technology. But again, show your children what's appropriate, okay? Now let's talk about tech-free zones. You're going to make some tech-free zones in your home. And these are areas where technology is not allowed. I forgot one. I just remembered the bathroom. Okay? So you might have a kid go in the bathroom, and an hour later they come out, and you're like, what were you doing in there? Playing Angry Birds, you know, or looking on social media, whatever. They don't need to be in the bathroom for that amount of time. Okay, so number one, make time for family. Family time should be a tech-free zone. So wherever the family is, if it's family time, there's no social media happening. It's fine if your family is like, oh, hey, let's post this picture. We're at, you know, miniature golf or something, and we're going to take a family picture, and we're going to put it up. But remember, that just violates everything I just said. So never mind. You're going to scratch that. See? If you just put some things in place, you're not going to text that. You're going to do it when you get home. You're going to say, oh, we had so much fun, you know, as a family. But don't do that, you know, to try to make yourself look good when your family's not having fun. You're dragging them through. Come on, we're going to go over here and have fun, right? And then all right, everybody smile for this. You smile or I'll put you on restriction for a month. And then, all right, look at us. Here's us having fun. We're such a great family. Kids are like, we can't stand being around you. So family time is a tech-free zone, okay? Talk to your children. Get to know your children. Don't think, well, they're a teenager. You know how many times I've heard, well, they're teenagers. They need their space. You know what you're saying? You need your space. And you say, they need their space, and I don't have time, or whatever. They need to go, and they need to do whatever. You need to know what's going through your teenager's mind. So spend quality time, get to know your children. Did you know that the average parent spends 38 and a half minutes per week in meaningful conversation with their children? That's 5 minutes a day. That's sad. That is really sad. That should not exist in the church. It should be like 40 minutes a day of meaningful conversation. If you have that kind of time, right, between you and your kid. The problem is sometimes we're doing so many different things and going in 100 different directions, but you're going to have to work to find the time to do this. Because if you do, it's going to equate into them being a more well-rounded adult and being able to handle technology better. They'll be less likely to be depressed and all that, okay? Another thing you can do, play board games with them. Not boring games, board games. Find some fun game and play with them. Yes, you could even play Fortnite with your kid. Okay, how many of you guys like video games, just out of curiosity? Adults. I know the kids are all raising their hands. Adults. Okay, not very many. How many of you adults are just like, I do not like video games? Do you know how many of you will be super cool if you sat down with your kid and played a video game? Do you know how cool I am because I sit down with my kids and play video games, and other kids find out, they're like, you what? I did not say I sit down for hours and play video games. That's not what I said. But I do sit down sometimes and play video games with them, and when the high schoolers find out, like, I know what they're talking about, they're like, wait, what? You know what we're talking. So it's important that you sit down. Look, and we'll talk about gaming systems and that kind of stuff and age appropriateness in a moment. But you can sit down with them, and there's lots of family games that you can play. Okay, so it's not just shoot 'em up games. There's lots of great wholesome family games that you can play. Find them. Okay, but don't use the excuse, I don't know what to do. If you say, I don't know what to do, I think what you're really saying is, I don't want to. None of us knows what to do. You might say, well, I don't know because my dad didn't show me, and we all could have some version of that. That is not a viable excuse. Because I've seen men that they didn't never know their dad, or their dad did nothing but mistreat them, and they are amazing fathers. And they do more with their kids than I see other guys that grew up with the role model father. So it's not about what kind of example you had, it's about your willingness to figure it out. Okay? And so figure it out. Your children need you, though. They don't need a bigger house. They don't need more cars, they don't need more clothes, and they don't need more toys. They need you, okay? Another area is bedrooms. Bedrooms are a tech-free zone. And I put no, 1,000 times no. Tech-free, that means TVs, gaming systems, phones, tablets, whatever, okay? They can have a robot dog, but nothing else. Okay, here's why. I received a phone call from an administrator, and I was given permission to share this. So where they're at is none of your business as an administrator, but I received a phone call after last week's message and was told about a student in this school that was having grade problems, and they thought it was because the student was playing a sport and they were having about 4 to 5 hours of homework a day, and they thought that it was because of that this student is doing really poorly in grades. So then they started to evaluate, and they thought, well, maybe the student might need special education, which is not bad if a student needs that. But in this case, when they did more digging, they found out that the student was spending 10 hours a day on their phone. 10 hours a day. They had spent in 1 week 27 hours on YouTube and another 25 or so hours on either Instagram or Snapchat, some other app. I don't remember exactly what it was. So they found out that the student was only getting about 6 hours of sleep per night. And since they were only getting about 6 hours of sleep per night, their brain function was about 60% of what it should be. When you don't get sleep, you don't function well. If I get 6 hours of sleep in one night, I'm functioning at like 30%. I'm like, whoa, where am I, right? So think about it, but on a prolonged basis, you can't do that. And so the other thing they said is, and this is true, I looked it up, on the Sleep Foundation, okay, check this out. Just because you're using your cell phone before bed doesn't mean that it can't harm your sleep. Keeping a mobile within reach can still disturb slumber thanks to the chimes of late night texts, emails, calls, or calendar reminders. About 72% of children ages 6 to 17 sleep with at least one electronic device in their bedroom, which leads to getting less sleep on school nights compared to other kids, according to their parents. The difference adds up to almost an hour per night, and the quality of snoozing is negatively affected too. To get a better night's slumber, parents can limit their kids' technology use in the bedroom, and mom and dad should be a solid, listen to this is not a Christian website, right? Mom and dad should be solid role models and set the tone by doing the same. So what happens when you get in bed, your body says, I'm in bed, I'm getting ready to go to sleep. But if you get on your electronic device and it emits the blue light, which is the same as what the sun outside is emitting, your body says, oh, we're not going to sleep yet. And so if you're sleepless and then you get on your phone, you're actually just making matters worse, which is what a teenager or a child would do, right? Because they're not thinking about that. So it disrupts their sleep. So God's made us, look, our bodies need to sleep. And so when you get in bed, that's what you need to do. And so I say that should be a tech-free zone. Another tech-free zone, definitely the dinner table. The dinner table. Oh, by the way, Kids who eat most often with their parents are 40% more likely to say that they get mainly A's and B's in schools than kids who have 2 or fewer family dinners a week. Okay, these are statistics, okay, which means listen to them. I guess it doesn't always have to mean that way, right? Because you can twist statistics, right? Check this out. Adolescent girls who have frequent family meals and a positive atmosphere during those meals are less likely to have eating disorders. One more. Frequent family meals are associated with lower risk of smoking, drinking, and using drugs, with a lower incidence of depressive symptoms and suicidal thoughts, and with better grades in 11 to 18-year-olds. I'm thinking dinner is important as a family. Are you picking up on that? So if dinner is that important that we should be having it at the table together as a family, then it needs to be unobstructed. Okay, Pastor George handed me this. I was going to save it to the end, but we'll pull it out now. See this little box? It says, "It's family time, hand over the electronics." You're like, "I'm not tech savvy. I don't know how to do all that tech savvy stuff." You can find a box. You could do that, right? At Christmas time, Sam's over here had these really nice boxes. You could put a lock on each side of it. It looks like a Pelican case, if you know what that is. They're waterproof and they're nice. The biggest thing is they were cheap. They were like $18, and you could put a lock on each side. You could just say, "Hey, put the devices in there." Mom, Dad, that means your device needs to go in there too. Make sure you turn them off so you don't, ruin your battery. You put them in there, you lock them up, and you say, "It's family time." And you do what we did when we were kids. You talk. Okay? Other times that should be tech-free times. Drive times, use it to talk to your kids, right? Or date nights. Now, my question for you is, do you know what your children are going through? Do you know what your children are going through? And I will just tell you this. I've heard a lot of teenagers tell me they're going through stuff and their parents have no idea and they're afraid to tell them. Your child should not be afraid to tell you anything. Anything. Nothing. Your kid, like my kid, is going to sin. You sin, right? I sin. We sin. But if your kid sins, you want them to come to you and tell you, "I blew it, I need your help." You don't want them to think, "If you ever sin, you better not come and tell me, because I will destroy your life." I mean, think about it. How am I communicating the love of my Father in heaven if my child cannot come tell me they messed up? Isn't that exactly what 1 John 1:9 says? That as a child of God, I should be able to run to my Father in heaven and be able to confess my sin to him immediately. And the Bible says he is what? Faithful and what? Just. Does he hold a rod over our head to smack us when we blow it? No, I mean, he doesn't make light of sin, because he says in Galatians, "Don't be deceived, I am not mocked. What a man sows, that will he reap." Okay, so there's a sowing and reaping thing, but again, if our children do something, and we want them to come to us, okay? So find out what they're going through. Put the technology down and talk, okay? Point number two, alt. Okay, the alt key alternates what things do. And oftentimes, when our kids sin or when they blow it, we tend to focus on what they did. And we don't even focus on the heart. Something happened as a result of where their heart is. And we can focus on what they did. So I hear, "My kid did this sin at school, so I'm taking him out of that school and putting them in another school." Okay, well, unless you address the heart, they're just going to do the same thing at the other school. Do you understand? They did this thing on the computer, so I took away the computer, and as soon as they get a chance, they're going to run to another computer and do it. So we have to deal with what's really the issue, okay? And that's the heart. Jesus said in Luke chapter 6, verse 43, he said, "A good tree does not bear bad fruit, nor does a bad tree bear good fruit, for every tree is known by its fruit." And he says, a good man, out of the good treasure of his heart brings forth good, and an evil man out of the evil treasure of his heart brings forth evil. For out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. Okay? Paul Tripp says, fruits determine roots. Fruits determine roots. In Ezekiel chapter 14, verse 1, it says, "Now some of the elders of Israel came to me and sat before me, and the word of the Lord came to me, saying, 'Son of man, These men have set up idols in their hearts and put before them that which causes them to stumble into iniquity. So before it was ever a sin issue, it was a heart issue. So before they ever went and committed an act, it was first the thought, it was thought about to some degree, and then it was acted upon, and it became some sort of an idol in your child's heart. That's what happens when we go through it, right? And some sin, not every sin. If you have a sin of passion in the moment, you're not necessarily premeditating or thinking about it. But again, if my heart's not right, I'm more prone to that, okay? Tripp further states, what controls the heart controls the behavior. That it doesn't surprise me then when we look around and we read the stats like we did last week of what's happening with our teens and technology. The technology is what's controlling their hearts. And then they're becoming addicted to it. And that's why, for example, we'll look tonight and we'll see, you can actually see how many times your phone is picked up. Did you know that? You can actually see how many times you pick up your phone. If I asked you, I guarantee you, if I said to you, how much time do you think you spend on your phone in a day? You'd say, I don't know, half hour? Well, there's a way to find out. Tripp says even a desire for a good thing becomes a bad thing when that desire becomes a ruling thing. So when that thing becomes in my heart or in my mind more than it should, it's a problem. Again, this is just technology. This is an iPad, right? But if I'm the iPad, and everywhere I go, I got to have the iPad in my hand, then there's a problem. Turn to Deuteronomy 6, verse 4. Deuteronomy 6:4. This is known as the Shema. It says, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength. And these words which I command you shall be in your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children." Notice that. They need to be in your heart, and you need to teach them to your children. And look at what he says. He goes on, it says, "You shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up." What is that? That's, if you're driving on the 91 and someone cuts you off and you want to call them a bad name, you tell your children how, "I just wanted to call that guy a bad name, but the Lord says I shouldn't call people bad names," right? What are you doing? You're actually teaching your kids how to deal with the situation. When you're out walking in public and you're talking about the Lord, or you go to the mountains, or you go to the beach, or where, it doesn't matter where you are. You're talking about the Lord and his goodness all the time. Not just sometimes. It's not delegated to Sunday morning while we're at church. It's all the time. And so that's what that is. Now, truly, the love of God, to truly love God with all your heart, means that you will obey him in his commands. Because that's how it's lived out. That's how love is displayed in action. It's not just a word. So don't, for example, with your kids, don't just tell your kids that you love them. Show them that you love them. And show them that you love them by spending time with them. If your kids know that you love them, they're not going to go running around in the world looking for something or someone else to fill that void. They're going to find it in your home. You don't want them running around looking for that somewhere else. Now, a commentary by Walvard and Zuck says, the parents were in a position to impress them on their children's hearts also. The moral and biblical education of children was accomplished best, not in formal teaching period each day, but each day when the parents, out of concern for their own lives as well as their children's, make God and his word the natural topic of a conversation, which might occur anywhere, anytime during the day. So be open to that. A couple of other verses real quick. Proverbs chapter 6, verse 20 talks about keeping the commands of our father and the law of our mother, binding them continually upon our heart. Now, here's what the Jews did. And you can even go see this today at the Western Wall. They have this piece of leather wrapped around their arm, and then they have the phylacteries, which contains that, okay, between their eyes and whatever else might be in there. And they took it as an external thing, but it didn't penetrate their heart. It has to be in the heart. So many times as parents, we aim for the head, and we get our kids just filled with head knowledge, but we're not actually training the heart. We need to make sure we're training the heart. That's very important. And that will help steer them when it comes to this kinds of stuff. And then also read together. You need to have family devotion time together. At some point in time, I'm not saying, and dads don't go, all right, that's it, tomorrow morning we're going to wake up and it's going to be an hour Bible study. It should be fun with your kids, whatever age they are. If you have little kids, don't sit down and start reading them the old King James. Okay? Go get a children's Bible out of the bookstore. We had the Rhyme Bible. My kids loved the Rhyme Bible. And I would read them the Rhyme Bible. And we would go through, and honestly, we still have the book today. They love Jonah the most. And so it's worn out right where Jonah is. All of our kids. This is what we did. So that's where we started them. We're not still in the Rhyme Bible. Okay, Josiah, you're 19. What do you want to hear? Oh, Noah. You know, that'd be pretty funny. Okay, so part of getting your kids to talk to you too and having that relationship is that they'll be free to come and talk to you, which is going back to the FBI agent I spoke to before. He said when children get in trouble on the internet, they don't tell their parents because they're afraid of getting trouble. And so what happens is someone online, they'll get connected with your kid, or especially your daughter, and they'll say, hey, send me a picture of you with your bra on or something like that. If your child does that, here's what they do next. Then they send the child pictures of your Facebook or your Instagram and whoever, and their friends, and they'll say, if you don't send me more, I'm sending this picture to all of them. What kid wants to be embarrassed? So then the child is blackmailed into sending more pictures. Okay? So you need to have this discussion with your kids and teach them, again, all these things that we're talking about, so they can feel free to come to you. So if they're ever approached, they will immediately come to you and say, this weirdo asked me for this, and you can say, let's go find out where that weirdo is. I mean, get the police. That's what I meant to say. Okay, number 3. Delete. And this is, I'm putting delete the bad usage, so getting that out of your life and foster the good usage, okay? And this is where we're talking about putting up external boundaries. This is putting the technology in place, but not trusting or relying on the technology, okay? Because like we said last week, if your child has just a desire to go find it, they're going to find a way to do it, but this is going to minimize that. Here's the rule of thumb. If it has Wi-Fi, and it can get to the internet, and it has a screen, it can get to pornography. Okay, so think about that. A gaming system, a tablet, a cell phone. I've had more parents tell me, I didn't know the Xbox could look at pornography. Okay, the Xbox and the PlayStations, if you even look at the package, they're not being sold as just a gaming device. They're a home entertainment device. Which means, yes, you can play video games, you can also watch movies, you can also stream music. I mean, there's like a bazillion things that you can do with gaming systems, okay? If you get a camera, you can do more. So think about it. There's so much there. So what you need to do is realize that. You need to make sure that your Wi-Fi router is secure. We talked about that last week. But then also you're going to need to find out, because I cannot go over all the devices. We'd be here for a month. That's your responsibility. You have to go see what kind of device you have and go figure out how to set up the parental controls for that device. I am very tech savvy. I know Apple's up one side and down the other, but when it comes to PCs or Microsoft world, I don't know a thing. So with the Xbox, I had to go sit and watch. It took me about 45 minutes, and I set up all the parental controls before they ever got to play one video game. Okay? So you need to do that. Just so you're aware, just in passing as we talk about gaming systems, if you want a gaming system for your children, so we're talking under 13, for example, I would look at the Wii or a Nintendo. Okay, we found this out. We went into Best Buy and we're like, we don't know, we're thinking of getting a system for our family that we can all play games. And the guy said, okay, you have children, stick to the Nintendo. Because Nintendo targets the family. And you're not going to find, too many. Maybe there's a few. You won't find too many mature video games. And there's a rating on the video games, just like there is on your movies and all that stuff. By the way, something else I didn't put in here. If you want to find out about a band, a movie, a video game, go into pluggedinonline.com. Pluggedinonline.com. They have reviews, and they have they'll tell you how many bad words are in it, and it's a Christian version there's a worldly one for movies that will tell you how many bad words are in a movie, okay? So Xbox and PlayStation, these are targeted for teenagers and adults, okay? So the games are going to be very mature in nature, and you don't necessarily want your 7-year-old out in that world. Okay, so at this time, let me plug in my iPad here to the screen. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take you into the settings. I'm just going to show you very briefly. What you're looking at here is my usage. Now you'll notice up at the top there, it says today, it's 8:16 p.m., productivity, reading and reference, entertainment. What is not good today? Only 4 minutes of entertainment. No clapping for that? Okay, we'll move on. I'm just kidding. Okay. Now, this gives you, now if you see here, look at Notability. That's because I'm using it right now for my notes. Logos Bible, 25 minutes, news, 17 minutes. If I wanted to set a time limit on any one of these apps, all I would have to do is click on it. I'm in Notability. Do you see where it says add limit? I click add limit and I put in a time limit. This is why I personally, when it comes to devices, love Apple. And if you love Androids, I'll pray for you. Okay, because you'll see in a moment, Android does not have anything like this. When Apple, and this is new to Apple products, but Steve Jobs was vehemently against pornography, and that's why there's like, except for web browsers within the App Store, you're not going to find apps that are pornography in the App Store because of that. And so they do a lot with this stuff, and they have for a long time. That's why I liked it when it came to our children. So anyways, you can go in here and you can do that on any one of these things. Going back here to screen time, you'll notice that I can make downtime. I can actually say my kids can only use their device twice a week for an hour. So the content privacy restrictions, you can block inappropriate content. If you go in here, you'll notice this is where I could turn off the location, advertising, all this stuff, speech recognition, passcode changes. So if you go in and you decide what you're going to allow your child to do or not do, that's the place that you would go in, is in screen time, and you would set it up and you would put limits for your child. But you can also, if you're wondering what your child is spending all their time on, you can come in here, because again, if you go here, it's going to give you today and the last 7 days. I just turned it on this morning, so it's not filled up with last week of stuff, okay? Because none of your business. I'm just kidding. I just turned it on. So I'm going to go ahead, or at this time, I'm going to have Jordy come out. Jordy's going to walk you through the Android, because I don't know Android from a hole in the ground. This is Jordy, everybody.
Hi.
AKA J.J. Abrams.
Hi, guys. Give me a second to get it all hooked up, and then... give me a few seconds,
He's really nervous,
actually.
so stare at him a lot.
Don't give me 1 second. So yeah, I think Shad asked me to do this because in high school, he would always get on my case about liking Android. And before that, I liked Windows phones. If anybody ever had a Windows phone, that was going to be the future, but no one hopped on board about it. So so that's why I'm here, I think, is because he always knew me as the guy that didn't do Apple. So yeah, I'll talk about a little bit about Android, if it can go on the screen. Cool, it's ready. So like he said, the Play Store in Android, you do have to be careful. It does allow pornographic apps and stuff like that on their store, because they're not against that kind of stuff, so you do have to be careful. But in the Play Store, there's one thing that you can do, is if you click on that little, here I'll go back, the hamburger menu in the top left corner, that's what those little bars are called, and then you go to Settings, you can go to Parental Controls and you can turn those on. So I'll demo that for you real quick. You can put in a little pin. I'm just going to do 1, 2, 3, 4. Do something better. Kids can guess those types of things. Like the other day, I was figuring out something for my aunt, and she didn't know what her pin was, so I just guessed a few different random things, and I got it. So make sure that you come up with something actually good. So you can change stuff. So through the apps, you can change the rating. So you don't want it probably to be on adults only and stuff like that. You're going to want to probably bring it down to something that's age appropriate. You can also change the settings for any movies that they buy through the Play Store. If you're on Android, you can have movies, and you can have TV shows, so you can change those types of ratings. I already have it set to G. This isn't my phone, though, so. But, and then there's the TV, and the books are the same. You can change the restricting sexually explicit books, so you'd want to have that checked. And then you can do it with music as well to restrict explicit music. So all the things related to the Play Store, you can change all those settings in one place. The next other spot is with searching. You can just change the setting now. Whoever is using it can change this back. So this would be something that you'd probably check back on. But you can go to the settings of the search bar specifically, and if you go to accounts and privacy, you can switch on the safe search filter, which I would recommend that you guys do this for yourselves. For me, I have this on anyway, because when you're searching even innocent things, random things can pop up. So you're going to probably want the safe search feature on. Those are just 2 ways that you can do things on Google. There's tons of videos online specifically for different types of Android phones because they're all a little different. There's, for instance, I have a OnePlus that's more stock Android. Pixel's its own thing. This is a Samsung. So they're all a little different. So I would suggest going to YouTube, finding out stuff. Also, all the apps that Pastor Shad talked about for last week, they're all on the Play Store as well. So I would really suggest looking into getting those set up on here. Google has its own as well, but I would like to caution you on that too. That only works until your child's 13. Then it reverts all the settings back to whatever the child wants it to be, because Google's decided that that's the year that you're allowed to do it, I guess. So I would just caution you, probably do one of the ones that he suggested. Don't do what Google says to do.
Never do what Google says to do.
Yeah. So I guess in that way, in one way, this will be the first time that I ever admit to Pastor Chad, Apple is better. And that's on record now. But
yeah.
that's the one way.
You can't deny it
So-
now. It's on record. It's recorded.
Yep. Do you need this back, or are you good?
No, we're good.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Jordy. Now, I know you're thinking, well, that wasn't, I didn't get that though. I don't know what to do. That's okay, because it wasn't given to you so that we could take the time right now to do it, but it's to show you that you can do it. And by the way, everything that he showed you with the age setting, the PG setting, all of that is in the iPad as well. So it doesn't, or a phone. So it doesn't matter if your child has one of those things. I'm just trying to show you there's something there. Do you understand? That's what I'm trying to show you. So don't say, I didn't know, because now you know. All right? Talk to your children about their privacy settings. And that's one of the things you need to go in and look at on their phones is their privacy settings, meaning, are they sharing their location? Are they sharing their location with certain apps that now know and are tracking where they are? Are they sharing too much information about what they want? My wife said today she noticed that if she was on Instagram and talked about something, that it showed up in Instagram later on. So then we tested it today to see if that was possible, and I just talked for 5 minutes about cookies, but no cookie ads showed up in my thing. So I don't know. Maybe there's just nobody selling cookies on Instagram, which means maybe you could get a market if you're really into that. The other thing is when you go on and you download apps, or your child is downloading their apps, and then it's asking you to share your contacts, you don't want to be, think about it. When we were kids, my mom and dad had a phone book. They wrote everybody's phone number in. Could you imagine someone coming to your door and saying, can I copy your phone book? Would you do that? No, but we just, on our phone, we just go, oh, whatever, click. Oh, you've just shared a lot of information, because when you go into your contacts, some may just be a phone number or an email, but some is a very detailed list of birthdays and all kinds of addresses. We wouldn't give that to a stranger at our door, but we're giving it to people online, so we need to make sure that we're not sharing that stuff. And then the last thing is to use a VPN. I know you're like, what is a VPN? A VPN is a virtual private network. Imagine for a moment if you're going to go, but we talked about this last week briefly, okay? Imagine that you're going to go anywhere in the world, but you first have to go to LA before you go there. So let's say that LA represents the VPN that you're going to use. We're using MobiSip, okay? So when my children or one of our computers logs onto the World Wide Web, and we're going to go do anything, it goes through MobiSip, okay? And so before it goes out, and that makes it more difficult for other people to capture your information, because you're going through a private network, which is not allowing other people who are data mining to get your stuff, okay? Which is how these targeted ads are popping up. One of the ways they're popping up on your Facebook, which Facebook is a really freaky world right now. They're constantly in the news for crossing lines when it comes to privacy. So they're taking your information and they're selling it. So I think you got to be careful about what information you're putting out there. And that's, again, one of the things that you need to talk to your children about. I want to share a poem with you, and then I'm going to share a couple of resources with you. Amy Carmichael wrote this. It says, "Father, hear us, we are praying. Hear the words our hearts are saying. We are praying for our children. Keep them from the powers of evil, from the secret hidden peril. Father, hear us for our children, from the worldling's hollow gladness, from the sting of faithful sadness. Father, Father, keep our children. Through life's troubled waters steer them, through life's bitter battles cheer them. Father, Father, be thou near them, and wherever they may bide, lead them home at eventide." Think about that for a moment. Wherever our kids go, that could be physically or digitally. Lord, may they never wander from your precepts. And if we do our job as parents, look, the Bible tells us, like arrows in the hands of a warrior, so are the children's of one's youth. And I think of training them like a bow, right? That you're training them on a target, and then what happens? One day you let them go. And they've got to go. But what are you aiming them for? Think about it. Exactly. But if you're not, if you're just aiming them for success in this world, guess what they're going to hit? Or if that, sometimes. We need to aim them for Jesus, okay? Okay, a couple of resources before we wrap up, okay? Number one, we have this beautiful at-home room outside here. Many of you guys have walked by it. Maybe you've never been in there. If you go inside the at-home room, they have all kinds of things for you in there. For example, this is all stuff that we taught a few years back when we did technology. When we talk about having a date with your children. Well, I don't know what to do. There's a recipe card for that. Gives you ideas. It says, in advance, preparation, set a date with your spouse. This could be with your child or whoever. So my daughter, if she's taking an art class over here, so sometimes on Thursdays I drive her over. We go get lunch together. We talk, we laugh, and then one of the things we do driving home is we listen to different kinds of music, and we talk about it. Take time to look at a suggested look of commitments. Pray that God would lead you. And then on the back, there's there's starter questions and things to talk about. Here's another one. It says screen-free fun ideas. There's a whole list on the back of things that you can do. Here's a different one. And this one says opening a dialogue with your teen. Have you ever driven with your teenager and you're like, I would really like to talk to them right now, but I have no clue what to say? I've done it. Oh, by the way, I caught myself driving home one day thinking how proud I was of my child, and then I realized I wasn't telling them. I'm not saying I never told them. I'm just saying in that moment, I was like, man, I'm so proud of them. And the Lord was like, why don't you tell them right now? And I was like, I'm just really proud of you. And do you know your kids need to hear that? Do you know when I ask kids, they hear more from their parents of what they're doing wrong, and they think that their parents are mad at them or hate them. You do not want your kid walking around thinking that you hate them. So encourage them. When you can, if they're being bad, tell them you're being bad. Stop it, and you need to discipline them. But you need to encourage them and tell them that you're proud of them. They need to hear it. You need their biggest cheering squad, okay? A couple of things you're seeing up here on the screen is the at-home website. It's at home, it should be calvarycch.org. And then down below, the Connected 3D campaign. Take a picture of the screen, focus on the family, parenting, kids, and technology, and then family life. If you come to me and say, I didn't know, I'm going to ask you if you were here, okay? And if you lie to me, Jesus knows. The other thing that I had copies of this printed for tonight is a social media contract for students, okay? Again, you're not telling them they can never have social media. Maybe you do, but if you are listening to what I've been saying, just training your kids how to use this stuff wisely, this contract goes over all sorts of stuff, like I agree to keep my settings at private at all times. Maybe you're not going to remember everything I said. Guess what? Most of it's on this page. Here's another one. I agree not to post any picture of my body parts. Did you ever think that you would need to have that conversation with your child? Nobody does. But then there's constant, in the news and children sending inappropriate pictures. So again, another one, I agree not to view pornography. It doesn't mean that they do it and you bring this back. Ooh, you look at this. Is this your signature right here? I see right there it says, but at least you're talking to them about it and the consequences of it, okay? So again, be parents, love your kids, train them up in the Lord, amen?
Man, that's some good stuff, huh? I'm reminded of when Peter warns the church that the devil's out there like a roaring lion seeking whom he may devour. And now more than ever we see him attacking all of us alike, but especially the youth, the children, online, with so many different dangers out there. And so I would encourage you to be vigilant, all of us alike. Nobody's outside of this responsibility to be careful, to be aware of what's out there, of the dangers, and to do our due diligence to be safe, be wise, use it to glorify the Lord. We're going to jump back into worship, but I would encourage you, don't delay. In everything that we've got to learn in these last 2 weeks, and it's been a lot. I know there's a bunch of information that he's spitting out, but don't delay to take action in all of these things. The devil loves to convince you to do it tomorrow and to continue to put it off one more day. But let's redeem the time. Let's be honest with where we're at, with where our kids are at, and let's deal with this now so that it doesn't get worse. Amen? I just want to close out real quick in prayer before we jump into worship. Lord, we do thank you, God, just for the reminder of our responsibility, whether we have children at home that we need to be leading, or whether it's just for us, and we need to make sure that we're being responsible with the amount of time that we have on our screens, with the content that we're allowing to come into our lives. God, I do ask that we would be leading by example. Lord, I do ask that you would give us the strength, the wisdom to learn how to lead on these things, how to lead our families, how to represent you well. And God, I pray that this would just be another platform for praise, that we would use it to glorify you, to magnify your name, and that all the glory would go to you, Jesus. We thank you for this time, Lord. Now we want to lift up our hands to acknowledge that you are good and that you are always with us. We thank you, Jesus, for this time. And it's in your name we pray. Amen.